What if I told you there was a time when a single flower petal was worth more than a blacksmith's entire life's work? When a lump of dirt with a root in it could buy you a sprawling estate on the Amsterdam canals? This isn't a fairy tale. This is a story of how the most beautiful flower in the world unleashed a wave of greed so catastrophic it turned the richest nation on earth into a financial madhouse. You're about to discover the terrifying truth behind tulip mania, a period when barbers, farmers, and maids risked their homes and their children's futures to gamble on flowers. This is the economic horror story they erase in the textbooks, a cautionary tale of how mass delusion can turn a simple garden plant into a weapon of mass financial destruction. Get ready, because what you're about to hear will change the way you look at a simple bouquet forever. It started innocently enough. In the late 1500s, a new flower arrived in the prosperous Dutch Republic from the Ottoman Empire, the tulip. It was unlike anything the Dutch had ever seen. Its colors were so vibrant, so intense, they seemed almost unnatural. At first, it was just a hobby for wealthy botanists and aristocrats, a status symbol to be shown off in exclusive gardens. But then, something strange happened. The flowers started to break. A mysterious virus, unknown at the time, would infect a bulb and cause the petals to unpredictably burst with spectacular new patterns of flames and feathers. These broken tulips were impossible to breed consistently. They were rare, unique, and utterly breathtaking. And in a culture obsessed with status and wealth, rare was just another word for priceless. Here's where the madness begins. A single bulb of a rare variety, like the legendary Semper Augustus with its blood-red flames on a pure white background, started selling for thousands of guilders. For context, a skilled craftsman at the time earned about 300 guilders in a year. People were spending 10 years' worth of wages on something they could plant in their garden. And this was just the beginning. The real insanity was yet to come. As the prices climbed, the actual flowers became irrelevant. The market wasn't about tulips anymore. It was about the promise of tulips. Most people trading these bulbs had never even seen the flower they were betting on. They were trading slips of paper in smoky tavern backrooms. Contracts for bulbs that were still in the ground. They called it wind handle, the wind trade, because that's what they were selling, nothing but air. Think about that. A shoemaker would sell his workshop, everything he owned, for a piece of paper with the name of a tulip on it. Not the flower, not even the bulb, just a note promising him a bulb he might get next season. He would then sell that same note to a weaver a week later for double price. Nobody was planting anything. They were just gambling, convinced they could sell the contract to a bigger fool before the bill came due. Here's a detail that will blow your mind. To make trading easier, they created a futures market that operated in the dead of winter, when the bulbs were dormant and frozen in the ground. The entire economy was based on a collective fantasy about flowers that didn't even exist yet. It was a house of cards built on frozen dirt. By the winter of 1636, the Dutch Republic had lost its collective mind. The tulip market wasn't just for the rich anymore. It was a national disease. Everyone was a player. Maids were selling their dowries. Farmers were auctioning off their livestock. Sailors were betting their next voyage's pay. Let's talk about what a single tulip bulb was actually worth. Historical records show one trade for a single viceroy bulb that wasn't even considered the rarest. The price? 2 massive loads of wheat for loads of rye. For fat oxen, 8 pigs, 12 sheep, 2 giant casks of wine. For barrels of beer, 2 tons of butter, 1,000 pounds of cheese, a complete bed, a suit of clothes, and a silver drinking cup. An entire life's worth of goods for one bulb. People were trading their ancestral homes, mansions that had been in their family for generations, for a single root. In one case, a man traded a thriving brewery with over 30,000 guilders for 3 rare bulbs. He was convinced he'd be the richest man in Holland. This wasn't investing anymore. This was a plague of greed, a mass psychosis where an entire nation believed a flower bulb would only ever go up in value. Then, in February of 1637, the music stopped. It happened in the city of Haarlem, at a routine bulb auction. For the first time, there were no buyers. Not a single one. Maybe a rumor had started. Maybe one big investor got nervous and quietly pulled out. But whatever the reason, the spell was broken. Panic erupted. The news spread like a virus, the very thing that made the tulips so valuable. Everyone tried to sell at once, but the bigger fools were all gone. The prices didn't just fall, they evaporated. A bulb that was worth 5,000 guilders one week was worth less than a single onion the next. The devastation was absolute. We're talking about a financial bloodbath. People who had been paper millionaires were now bankrupt. The man who traded his brewery for 3 bulbs now had 3 worthless onions. The shoemaker who sold his shop for a piece of paper had a piece of paper. The nation was flooded with worthless contracts and broken dreams. The courts were overwhelmed with lawsuits. Buyers refused to pay for bulbs they had agreed to purchase at insane prices. Sellers who had already spent their imaginary profits were now ruined. The government tried to intervene, offering to honor contracts at 10% of their original value. But it was useless. Trust had been completely destroyed. The Dutch economy, once the envy of the world, was crippled for years, not by war or famine, but by a flower. You'd think they would have learned their lesson, right? Wrong. The most shocking part of tulip mania is how quickly it was forgotten. For centuries, many historians downplayed the event, claiming it was exaggerated. They didn't want to admit that the rational founders of modern capitalism could fall for such a ridiculous, delusional frenzy. The real legacy of tulip mania isn't just a financial crash. It's a terrifying insight into human psychology. It proves that under the right conditions, entire populations can be driven by greed to believe in something that has no value, betting their entire lives on nothing more than hope that someone else will be even greedier. So the next time you see a beautiful flower, remember this story. Remember that for a brief, terrifying moment in history, that flower was a monster that consumed fortunes, destroyed families, and brought the most powerful nation in the world to its knees. If this descent into madness made you question the very nature of money and value, hit that subscribe button, because history is filled with these horrifying secrets.